infrastructure that needs to go into it, IT, desks, chairs, things of that nature.
And some of the existing building remodel. So remember
Right.
that one area where the offices are now, where you're going, that would not be increased capacity or new construction, that would be a remodel, so that would have to be taken out to figure out what the impact fees could be used for the two new wings, basically.
And so we can accurately say that we can use impact fee, ECHO grant money that we've already received, general fund money that we've already obligated to pay for the building itself, and then the general fund will pay for the people and some of the stuff we stuff inside it.
In terms of the rec impact fees, have all of those been derived from developments
Yes, ma'am.
that, are they derived up front, say as Woodhaven, or will we continue to get money as they move into each of the phases?
So Woodhaven impact fees cannot be used for the rec. So the impact fees have to be within construction, 5 miles radius as a crow flies. Woodhaven is the only project in the city right now that does not meet that.
Well, I guess where I'm going with that is you indicated the rec board and council talking about a second recreation center
And that
by
would be
2025, so.
Woodhaven can pay for that.
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out what would be available for that, because if in fact future developments which we know are coming but are not yet in the ground and will generate rec impact fees, then I'm of the mind those can be used for a future building, and what exists now, I'd spend every penny of it
So
on this project.
So you have a couple competing priorities with future impact fees. You have Karasi Park expansion, which is #1 on everybody's list until the community center is #1 on everybody's list, and you have the community center. So impact fees are
figured out.
yeah. So impact fees are important. ECHO grants are important. General fund money is important, and don't forget you have the option, which we're considered a pay-as-you-go city. We also have the option of doing a general obligation bond to bond or purchase any of that if that's what we choose in the future.
Question, please. We're talking about the need to replace those 2 units. Is that budgeted, or can funds be identified to do that as part of this project, or can we somehow remodel this to incorporate that?
So it's not budgeted in this year. We were tying it to the project budget when we start to go forward to see what comes in as an alternate. And then we look to fund balance, which is generally what we do when an air conditioning fails. We start to look towards fund balance if it's not budgeted ahead of time. So that's kind of our game plan for it moving forward. So we'll just kind of see where we're at. We could be pleasantly surprised. Construction might slow a little bit. We might get a good bang for our buck, and we might be able to build everything, including repairing those air conditionings for $3 million. We don't know until we go to market. And then again, we can go to market, and DJ Design does a really good job. I don't see this, but we can come in at $4 million, and we could be back in this room discussing how we're going to go forward from there. Just my experiences, but I think we have a really solid plan, and I think we've put a lot of thought into it. And I think we do have the items Dr. Ford talked about pulling out some items right off the top if we know we're going to be short. And like I said, we're very creative if we have to be. So we'll make work what we need to make work in the space we have.
That you definitely proven over time.
Thank you. One other thing I wanted to just mention. So the design is done. It's gone through our building department as a courtesy review to make sure we don't have any major hiccups or issues that have to be addressed that could cost us a lot of money. Dana had a meeting recently. I don't think building
That's
area
right.
special that came out of that meeting. We are gonna now start planning what we think can go in the building with the space we know is identified. We're gonna start to look at fees. We're gonna start to try and develop some kind of budget to let you know what we anticipate our revenues to be. Peter just pointed out to me off the top, we're hoping to move our summer camp out of the school and move it into the rec center in the summer. That saves us $8,000 right there. So those are the types of things that we think we can help generate savings in our budget, as well as then generate extra revenue to come in and help offset some of our costs.
Well, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as the rental revenue for the new building. I think it'll be very popular, especially with the amenities that you're building in, without a doubt, especially with the kitchen.
Something else to consider, which is my motivation for getting our house in here, is our house is on a prime Ridgewood property right now, and their rent is somewhere around, just close to zero, right?
Close.
Not saying zero is not the right number, but I can probably get some revenue generation out of that as well. Sure.
Jason, you good? Yeah, I'll be honest with you, until so we have funding source other than where it's completely, funded out there. That changed the whole thing for me, because I was a little hesitant given the times that we're in. From a personal level, I spent the majority of my childhood inside that gym, that guy over there. I put the number of hours that I spent there against any child that's ever come through here, and I grew up there, so it's important, it means a lot. I'm old school, I could take the road before that, quite honestly, I'm simple. But I understand the concept of the needs that we're trying to meet, and the expanding of services to multiple generations and cultures. So I certainly see the need in there, and I recognize the benefits of the upgrade and keeping us a family-friendly community that we are. But I do want to ask a few questions that I do want to ask, because I need to be prepared to answer these questions when people ask me about it, because at the end of the day, the staffing that it's going to take it's a big commitment to general fund, and I'm always a tough sell when it comes to adding more personnel year in and year out. But I understand it's needed for this. So I guess the question I want to ask is, what are the range of services and activities that we're offering now, and how much of an expansion that this is going to give us? And then the follow-up question to that is, where's the data that suggests there is a need to do all that stuff that we can't do in what we have now with the current staffing levels we have? That was a lot.
So that's a loaded question, and I'll try my best to answer as direct as I can. So we only know what we've always done, right? We know what we're successful with in this community and Parks and Recreation. And one of the things that we realize is we're only meeting a very small portion. We are very sport-oriented, three-sport-oriented, right? We play soccer, baseball, and basketball. We all know that there's a lot more that kids do nowadays besides those three sports. We only have two or three gyms, depending on how you look at it, to service our entire community. We used to have, when I first started in Port Orange, I think it's been 16, 17 years now, we used to have a lot of access to the schools. With security issues and those types of things, that has dried up for us. So we have had the staff to be able to run just our athletic programs. As you know, athletic programs happen at night. So staff has to then take away from their day hours in order to be here at night. By increasing the staff and increasing the footprint, it's allowing us to offer more multi-generational activities. The other thing that we're seeing in our community is a lot of multi-generational households. You're seeing grandparents living in the same house with the grandchildren. So and a lot of times we're seeing them bring them to practices, or bringing them to the games, and this now provides some capacity for what they can do. Many times you're seeing the gym being used. We have a large adult program during the day. So we have adult basketball and pickleball in the gyms in the morning. We have jazzercise classes right now in the morning. And all those people are paying an entry fee to get into the gym currently. And then in the afternoons, we have after after school. So we have kids coming over from Silver Sands, Creekside Middle School, high school, they play open gym basketball. However, if you don't play basketball, we get the kids just hang out. We know what happens when kids hang out, right? They usually get in some kind of trouble. At least if they're anything like I was when I was a kid. So this is going to allow us to expand some of those after-school activities. The other thing that it's going to, as far as the need is concerned, is we have received a lot of requests for additional classes, esports, indoor classes, indoor playgrounds, things like that we just haven't had the opportunity to provide to our community and our citizens. So this is going to enable us to do that. It is growing. I think it's setting your community or our community up for what the future family looks like. And it's going to help us provide those services so that kids like you now, Chase, that are growing up that may not play basketball like you did every day, have a place to go, that they have the same memories you have, it's just not their basketball. And so that's giving us that opportunity to provide for our community. And that's what this building's going to do, because it's a safe place, right? It has the walls, it's got security cameras, we can definitely see what's going on. We can keep an eye on children getting involved in activities, maybe start streamlining into more of our leadership stuff we've been struggling trying to get going in order to have that contact. The other thing that's happened with the school relationship as Parks and Rec is we've lost contact with the kids in the schools, just for the sheer fact that we don't have the access to them. We're not able to just go in and drop flyers off, and now they're closing off. We've been informed they're going to close off Silver Sands, and the kids aren't going to be able to walk through the back, which now means they have to walk all the way around. What does that mean? That means we're putting them now on Herbert Street, walking through the complex instead of coming from one safe location to another safe location. So we're going to continue to work with our schools to make sure we can try and provide that. But those are the types of things that we're seeing. Sport programs are fantastic. I was a sport kid. I grew up in sport programs. They're probably the reason I'm here today. But I also know that not all kids are sport kids. And we have to start meeting that need in this community. And it's something that we have not been able to meet over the past 15 years. So.
And again, just one more time, first of all, everybody should be fantastic. You say about a rec manager plus 4 or 5 new employees?
So originally, if you looked at our capital improvement plan, I glanced at it today, I think we were asking for 5 additional employees. However, with some efficiencies that we have found through Workday, I think we'll be able to cut that down to 4, and then we're sharing a position that used to be in athletics that will now actually move over into this building. Because some of the athletic function, like the after-school program that the athletic team has been doing, will now be done by the rec staff. And they're not going to have to handle the after-school stuff. So we're still shaking all that out. Originally, we had put in the budget for this year, before we were asked to push this project a little bit, we put in for 4 new employees. James, do you remember? I think we put in for 4 new employees. I think it was a supervisor, a coordinator, and 2 specialists. Now, with that said, we are assuming that you want this building open 7 days a week, okay? If you don't want the building open 7 days a week, we can scale back. But in order to cover it 7 days a week, we would need to have that full-time staff, and then we're asking for additional part-time hours to help supervise the facility. So, again, that's an assumption. We don't have to be open 7 days a week, but that's the assumption that we had. If you're going to invest this kind of money, I would assume that's what you would want. So that's what we went with. But that can be also altered depending on what the budget is and what you guys are comfortable with giving us to work with.
And Drew, are you good with the money source? Yes. And I assume based on your recommendation that you are? Yes, we are. Okay. What else do you have for us?
I don't have anything else. I think the board wanted to talk about priorities real quick going forward. I know we've talked a little bit about that, so I don't know if you want to turn it over to Chairman Bowling or how you would like to proceed.
I won't keep it. It's all yours.
All right. About 7 years ago, we talked about a community center. And it's taken us this long, and maybe in the next 2 years, it looks like it'll come to fruition. And one of the things that we've learned being on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, you gotta be forward thinking. Where do we want to be 5, 10 years from now? So I'm going to throw out some ideas that I want you guys to be able to know that you've heard it before we come and ask you for money down the road. Okay? We talked about it a lot tonight about the West Side Community Center. We were hoping to have that by year 2025, and I would still like to see that happen. And we talked about different locations and where we can put that, but that is something that is definitely right on top of our list of priorities going forward. That being said, we also want to see the expansion of Crossing Park. We think that the Crossing Park expansion is very important to the city, because recreation is a very important role that the city has for incoming and our existing community. A couple other things that is on my agenda, and we haven't had an opportunity with all the COVID and everything else to talk about it with everybody, but the White Place redevelopment. I think it's very important that we have another park over in the River District. Right now, it's not being utilized the way it should be utilized, and I think we need to put a little money, prepare something, have an idea of what we're going to do with that location, and I think we need another park over in the River District of Port Orange. Also, going forward, these are a little longer range plans, but when you have the opportunity to look at some of the stuff that Woodhaven is doing out there, it looks like they have a piece of property that they have designated as a park site. I drove out there recently. It looks like most of that property that they have designated as a park site is a rather large retention pond, but there is some possibility there. I'd like to see us look at that in the future and find out a way that we can utilize that property that they've set aside as a park site for a future park for the city of Port Orange. Also, I know that this is also another 7 or 10 years down the road, but the Pioneer Trail interchange is coming in, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for the Parks and Recreation to obtain a piece of land there as well to put a park for future use as well. I'm not sure if it'll be something we can use for athletic fields, but if we use it as a passive park, that would be something we need to think about down the road. Another thing that we probably need to think about is, do we want to build big recreation facilities, or do we want to have more neighborhood parks? I think now is the time to start thinking about that direction. If we're going to go with more smaller neighborhood parks, we need to acquire land in these developments so that we can have neighborhood parks. And if that's not the plan or the direction we want to go, and we want to go with larger recreational facilities, the biggest piece of that, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of most of this board, is the acquisition of land and the ability to do that. So many times when we've talked about in the past, wanting to build more facilities, more softball fields, more baseball fields, the land is the issue. So if we can start acquiring land as we grow, it would make it a lot easier for us as Parks and Recreation Department and the city to build these recreational facilities. And I was talking to somebody today, and I just asked them point blank, what would you like to see the city do for Parks and Recreation? And this one kind of surprised me, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. They said they would like to see a BMX location and a motorized four-wheel and two-wheel vehicle facility, basically a place where they go out and ride their motorbikes or their four-wheelers. They don't have any place now to do it, and they would like to see that happen. That's another thing that we can think about. Obviously, that's a long-range plan, but it is something that we might want to think about. Like we said, 7 years ago when we first bought the community center, it was like, well, where are we going to put it? What are we going to do? And everything else. It's taken a little while, but it's happened. You guys have made it happen for us, and we want to be able to give you ideas that we can eventually make the city a better place. Those are a couple of the items I have. I'm going to open up to the rest of the board and see if they have any comments.
I don't think I have any more additional to add. I think that pretty much covered a lot of
soccer or anything like that.
Never would have guessed.
John, any comments?
For many years, we talked as a board about excess land that's owned by the city that's not very useful as parks. That was a part of developments in the city. We identified several parcels, some of them were big, some of them were small. But we were really talking many years about how we could liquidate that and turn that into something useful for the Park and Recreation Department. I don't know if the city could re-examine that. Susan, do you have any info on that, or has anybody done anything on it? But I know we're sitting on land that could be repurposed, put back in the tax rolls perhaps, or used for something else. I don't know. But that's the only comment I had. Thank you.
More of a question for me. We may have discussed this in the past, I'm not sure. Have we ever considered any kind of artificial turf fields anywhere? I don't know if you guys have ever had the opportunity to go down to Vieira and see the fields that they have there. They have about 6, maybe 8 fields connected, allows them to run sports simultaneously at the same time, and still keep everybody separated. But I don't know if that's ever been a discussion for us, for some of the, not just for football, but they do it for soccer, flag, and other things like that. So, just curious.
Yeah, so we haven't looked into it recently, but we looked into it and it was pretty new. I think it was running around $11 a square foot for the turf. Some of the misconceptions that we were finding at the time was that you didn't need irrigation. And we found that you still needed irrigation because the turf gets very high. You still have to spray for weeds because the weeds still grow up in it. So the cost-benefit analysis that we did at the time, and again, this is based on, costs have changed recently, it would have taken about 15 years for us to pay for it. The life expectancy is about 10. And then the cost, because it's made of plastic, the cost to recycle it is very, or dispose of it is very expensive. So the city at the time, the board and the council decided that probably wasn't beneficial to us. The stadium, or the area you talk about, Vieira, it's a very large complex that is used, very similar to the one in Seminole County, is they make their money on tournament play. So they're bringing tourism dollars into the cities in order to do that. In the past, we have not had the appetite for that. Doesn't mean we can't in the future, but we don't have a complex per se that can bring in that kind. So if you all are familiar with Karasi, I think we thought we might be able to do some of that there. However, you can't be using the football and soccer fields at the same time you're using the softball fields because there's not enough parking. Right. So it's limited us on what we can bring in order to pay for it. But we have looked at it. It has its place for sure in recreation, but we haven't looked at it recently. But if it's the pleasure of the council and the board, we would be happy to look back into that again for you.
Susan, I get Facebook ads for turf is like 99 cents a square foot.
Not for sports turf?
Yeah.
Yeah. just lay it over concrete and go, right, Chase?
Didn't say what kind of turf, just turf.
This guy spends a lot of time on it.
I've been on the board for 5 years now, I think, and I think we've done, before that, we did Lebanon. That was the second big project I can remember we've done. It's a weird scenario to see it come from, like 5 years we've been talking about this, to see it come to fruition. And I know we talked about doing the West Side Community Center, and I look forward to working on that. And I just pretty much what Mark said, we'll talk about the other day, I'm completely agree with you. Thank you.
Something that a citizen put on my radar, and I told him that I would put it on the Parks and Rec Board's radar in the course of campaigning this summer, is to kind of measure and discuss yourself if that long-range plan also could include a disc golf facility, maybe at All Children's Park in the wooded area.